Welcome back to DASAR. This is another podcast where we interview a founder. This time we have Karthik Sridharan. He's a serial entrepreneur. He's the co-founder at Remote Clan, Remote Tools, and Flexible. Now, Flexible has just crossed $2 million in revenue, is what I read on Twitter. And I've been following you on Twitter. You've been generous to share your journey. So maybe we'll first start with Flexible, what it is, what does it do? And then your perspective around, does it make sense today for startups to hire people or just hire freelance developers?
Sure. Firstly, thanks for having me, Darshan. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. In a nutshell, what Flexible is that we've built an exclusive network of freelance developers and designers. We have a very comprehensive screening process in place through which we vet each person who joins the network. That's pretty much it. And then we connect them with amazing tech startups and companies across the world. And talking about the problem that you're sharing, which is something that I think almost every startup and company across the world is facing. So it is tricky. It is tough. I think engineers are the most sought out people at the moment. So there isn't going to be a single one answer which is going to always solve it for any particular person. So that's where I think companies have to be a little more agile in how they think about hiring. So there used to be a time when people weren't comfortable with hiring anyone remotely, right? And they were afraid, what if people steal our information, do this and do that? And so those thoughts have evolved, and of course the pandemic has pushed us to, expand our horizon and what we think and what we understand about remote work. So I think hiring remotely, hiring freelance developers as well, but also hiring full-time people, all of these three things need to be used in combination to tackle everyone's hiring needs. Each one has their pros and cons, right? Like if I were to talk about freelancing, which is where Flexible, really helps companies, the clear advantage is that we typically map a particular developer or designer within a week, right? And there are people who have extensive amount of experience. So it's going to be really helpful for a company that's growing really quickly and has a clear roadmap in place. But at the same time, I can understand the focus of companies where they are looking at getting a course engineering group together who will be with them for maybe the next 5 years, 6 years, and so on. So freelancing is not going to solve that. So they can supplement their freelance hiring with their regular hiring processes. But the con on that side would be that typically it's going to take them 3 to 6 months to find any good hire. So I think using both approaches might be the way to solve for these problems that we're facing at the moment.
Incredible. You've gone on to build a sustainable business, right? You've bootstrapped, you've not taken venture funding. Maybe first question is, why Bootstrap? And what were the early days and the challenges to get maybe $100,000 ARR? Because that's the break-even point, right?
No, great question. So when we started, all three of us co-founders are batchmates from IIMA Ahmedabad. So we knew each other very well. And as you can imagine, our alumni group network has a lot of people in the VC circle, right? So we had a lot of conversations around, funding and how we should go about it and so on. I think we were very clear that we wanted some amount of validation before we take on VC funding, because we wanted to understand what we were building in the first place, right? And as we started building it a bit, we realized that our particular industry is pretty cash rich. We didn't really need a huge amount of infusion at the very beginning, right? Like some businesses need front load cash, and our business wasn't it. Another thing was we realized that we need patience in this particular industry. There is no way of throwing money at problems and hoping that money solves it. I think there's a certain amount of patience we needed, certain amount of time and processes we had to invest into so that we start seeing results. And we recognize that very soon, within the first 6 to 8 months. And I think the way people view funding is, I think we view it a little differently. The thing is that I see that, when you build a startup, you have a bunch of tools, right? Like with which you can use, to build your startup. With, you have marketing, sales. I see funding as one other function, right? So if someone has to view funding, I think they should view funding as a lever for their growth rather than a make or break situation, right? So for us, it's always been a lever, and that's why I would never say never. There could be a particular point of time where we might want to use that lever, but at this point of time or till now, we've never found the use of that particular lever. So we have grown the way that
incredible. Scaling up, going from $100,000 to now $2 million in revenue. You've spoken a lot about how SEO has helped you and your company. But maybe you can speak a little bit about what have been your growth channels and your approach towards scaling up.
Sure. I think I missed that addressing that part in the previous question, which was how did we get to $100,000? Firstly, so we actually made two products. We invested about $5,000 each into both the products, and we had to dump both of them, right? And it's a very, unfortunately, a repetitive story in the entrepreneurial cycle. I hear so many entrepreneurs say just this. And the problem, I think, typically is that when people think of building a startup, they think of building a product rather than thinking about just solving the problem that you are aiming to solve first. So come up with a solution first, and then look at how can that be scaled using tech. So we didn't do that. We, of course, said that we need to build tech, and we did it, and we wasted $10,000. But the good part of it was we didn't have infinite amount of money in our bank accounts. So we realized that we have to, find some other way to be able to solve whatever we need to solve. So we used Google Sheets, very simple. It had two tabs. We had a marketplace. So one tab was companies, another tab was freelancers. So we would regularly talk to freelancers on LinkedIn, and we would just note their names down, parameterize all the skills and all of that. Then we would keep pinging our friends whom we thought would know people in other funded startups. We thought that was our particular audience. And using LinkedIn, again, we would find someone, some way who could connect us with one particular person in that particular startup and get conversations with. As you can see, it was very outbound and it was very hustle driven. So we were able to find our first 10 to 15 customers just doing this hustle. And then we slowly started seeing that there were referrals that were exchanged. So some people, really enjoyed the experience. So they started recommending others. And that sort of got us through the first $100,000 itself. So it was Google Sheets, nothing else, nothing fancy. So I think that's one of the biggest lessons for me. And that's one of the things I try to communicate to any person that I talk to with an idea, which is that an MVP or a product is not something which is fancy. We look at Uber or Swiggy and we say, wow, what an amazing mobile app. And we think that needs to be our first product as well. It could very well be just Google Sheets, Airtable, WhatsApp, and so on. So that was our journey till $100,000. Now, the second part, which was, of course, scaling from 100,000 to about 2 million. So we realized that, of course, we can't keep doing some of these things forever, right? And that's when we figured that a lot of these things have to start happening inbound. We recognized that, and that was a mistake from our part. We should have worked on inbound even in the first phase. But again, we made 100 mistakes before we were able to make one particular positive movement. So we tried a lot of channels. We tried SEO, we tried Google Ads. We also used to engage a lot in a lot of the online communities like Product Hunt, Reddit, subreddits, and there are many other like Indie Hackers and so on. So we ensured that we were active in these communities and slowly also started becoming a little more active on social networks like Twitter, LinkedIn, and so on. So the goal was to ensure that either companies or freelancers, they find out about Flexible and they reach out to us so that then our work should be to parameterize the requirements, parameterize freelancer skills and their personality, and do the matching in a better fashion. So that was the goal. We floundered a lot. Google Ads bombed. I think we spent a lot of money in that, close to, at least a lot from our perspective. So we spent close to 7-8 lakhs there and didn't make any particular move which was meaningful in any way. We did a lot of outbound sales. That was also not very successful because I feel in our particular industry, there are just so many people sending cold mails saying, I'll find you amazing developers. It's tough for companies to be able to discern who's a quality network and which is not a quality network. So SEO really worked out for us. And I think in hindsight, it does make sense. And one of our biggest competitors has SEO as one of their main channels as well. So that was what motivated me to really pursue that really hard. And of course, it took a lot of time. That's what SEO is about. It takes time, it takes patience. But when it started delivering, the returns were just exponential. And it's been only a year and a half where we have really dialed down on SEO. And from about 4,000 or 5,000 monthly traffic, we are now at almost 200,000 monthly traffic. Right? So it's been a really exponential growth over there. And we've made a lot of other side projects. We have, so when I say side projects, we feel that we need to be really helpful to our target audience. So like startups and developers. So we made a platform where people can download free illustrations and don't have to attribute it to us, don't have to pay us whatsoever. So we keep doing such nifty side projects, and those also attract leads for us. So these have been the typical ways that we have tried to do it. Of course, recently in the past 6 to 8 months, I didn't have any social account at all before 2020. So I was very social media averse. But I realized that again, as a bootstrap company, I need to be the PR.
Yeah.
When I say I, Rishikesh, my co-founder, and I, we decided we need to do it. And we did that. And I think we try to not just to be true to our own personality, because we are not really extroverted. We try to just share our experiences. I don't think we can be those really handy tweet making guys. So we just share our experiences. We talk about what worked for us, what didn't work for us, and that's also helped us.
Yeah,
we get
I've
a lot
been
of leads
following
from
Rishikesh as well, and you guys have been doing really good. And the free stuff that you've been providing has been useful. You're creating this ecosystem where you have Flexible. Flexible is working well, and then on the other hand, you have Remote Clan, which is a community which you're trying to build. And then you have remote tools where you can discover various tools for remote work. Maybe walk through the thinking behind what is this flywheel?
So actually, remote tools started very differently, right? So remote tools started again as one of those side projects. We felt that, one particular major target audience of ours are remote companies. So we just wanted to be in front of them and to be able to subtly market Flexible through remote tools. That was the initial goal. But then the more we started reading about remote work, and this was in 2018, much before the pandemic. So we felt that remote work is really going to be the future, because we saw really exemplary companies like GitLab, InVision, where they had thousands of employees across 60 plus countries. And they were really functioning well. They were $1 billion plus companies. I felt that really makes a proof of concept in place, to show that in the future, this is how companies can be built. So we really started investing more and more into it. Our focus was, okay, maybe we can just give out useful content. So we started making podcasts. We started writing newsletters. We started interviewing remote workers. So our goal was that we felt that, okay, over a period of time, our goal would be to build a community of remote workers, given that we felt that remote working would be the future, and to be able to see how we can leverage the community to build something really interesting on top of it. Right. So, of course, the pandemic came last year and things really accelerated. So we launched Remote Clan sometime early last year, and one part of the community has been launched. Now, the massive goal, I think, a really aggressive goal is to build something like a LinkedIn for remote working, right? That's the massive goal. And I think our expertise is around the hiring industry, right? We've already established a certain amount of expertise through Flexible. And I think we want to do that also in the full-time hiring space through Remote Lab. So the goal is to be able to build something like that. It's really tough. So the medium-term goal that we have set for ourselves is to be able to build a new kind of job board. There are already a lot of remote job boards out there. So what we are trying to build is a remote job board which can give a lot more information about the underlying companies. So I think right now there is a bit of it's a bit opaque when people apply to roles. Roles are said to be remote, but companies, what are the perks that they provide or what is the remote environment that they provide is not very clear. So we want to build something like that, like a Glassdoor for remote companies, which can then give people a better idea on in terms of which company or which particular role they're applying for, and then slowly see if this can be expanded into a kind of a network where we can ultimately reach to our goal. So this is the vision. There are a lot of small steps. Remote Tools has its own step in all of this. So we're still taking very baby steps on the other fronts.
Incredible.
Hopefully we see some major moves made in
this community myself. These are people who want to just be better versions of themselves. Be better at what they're doing, be better and gain financial independence, create things, break things, and also work on their fitness. So those are the larger themes that I'm kind of curious or interested about. So what has been your journey in terms of trying to build this community? What is it that you are how are you going about it?
So I think it was thankless, I think, to a large degree initially. And even now there are points of time when, because all our content, we've generated huge amount of content, and I think a lot of the effort has gone personally from Rishikesh's side or my side, a lot of the effort. Of course, we've got some really bunch of amazing people who've joined us in the last 6 months, but before that, it's been a lot of our effort. So we do have those points of time when we introspect and think, okay, was it all worth it, but there are moments where you get some amount of gifts, I can say, when people really talk positively, and we are seeing that happen. And we have started monetizing Remote Tools now. So, and that's happened largely because people have seen the quality of content we have put for the past 2.5, 3 years. So I don't think it would have been possible otherwise. There are moments when I think that we should have monetized maybe a year earlier, and it's been a little too late. And that's why if I talk to someone, I really push them to monetize as early as possible, right? Because I think once you start monetizing, your users tell you what to build, what to say. Because otherwise, when you give free content or free stuff to people, there's just not so much respect because they're not paying for it.
What is the one company or a few companies that you look up to?
So Basecamp is amazing, right? Like they're not only a Bootstrap company, they're also a remote company, fully remote company. So there is a lot to learn for us as Flexible from them. And I have learned a lot from Jason Fried. They've learned a lot from DHH. I read a lot of what they write. And I like how opinionated they are, right? So, and we are also, and a lot of us are opinionated. It's just that I think they also have the knack of being able to communicate that in a very nice way. So I try to learn a lot of that from people. So it's not so much about following companies, but a lot about following individuals. And those individuals are also transient, right? In the sense that there are certain points of time when I'm looking to build a certain aspect of my personality or certain aspect of my skill set, and I'll really be reading a lot about certain people. Versus, a couple of months later, I'll find something else interesting which is more relevant to me, and I'll try to look at that. So I think there's no particular standard set of people I try to look up to. Of course, my own 2 co-founders are people I look up to because anytime I have an idea, anytime I have to execute something, the first thing I do is I write a really long document and I share it with them, and I tell them to absolutely tear it apart. Right. So then we have a good discussion, because I think you need people who give you a reality check, right? And nothing better than the people who have been, who've been on the journey with me for the last 4 years.
You worked in the financial industry for a few years. So maybe you can share how the experience of working at JP Morgan and then your subsequent, MBA program at IIM Ahmedabad has helped you or culminated into what you are doing today.
I think there's a huge contribution, and it's not only a contribution from a perspective of skill sets, but it's a contribution from a perspective of mindset. I think JP Morgan was amazing in the sense of the first couple of years I learned a lot, and it was my first job out of college, undergrad. So there was a lot of new things, and the finance sector really excited me. Right, there are a lot of big things that happened, but I felt that after the first couple of years, my growth really plateaued. I felt that I was not learning a lot of new things, and the number of hours I was putting in was astronomical. It was just too much for the amount of output I was getting out of it, or the skill sets I was getting out of it. So I was slowly starting to become almost miserable, and it was the time that I actually got a job in London, and a lot of my friends said that this would possibly be the worst move I would make from a career perspective. That JP Morgan London investment banking job, this is what everyone vies for, and you're thinking of quitting it. This is the worst thing you can ever do. In a few years, all of us will be way ahead in our careers, and you would, be regretting this decision that you've made. And that sort of really hit the nail on its head. And I felt this is the reason I have to actually take this decision through, because I felt too much of the times people are very focused on their careers rather than happiness. At the end of the day, and I know the goal of DASAR is also very, very, very similar. So I think your career and various other parts of life need to add up to happiness very clearly today. I don't believe in happiness coming 10 years into a fictitious future, and us really being miserable today so that we can have that fictitious future happiness. So I quit the JP Morgan job, and that gave me the mindset that whatever next thing that I do really needs to give me happiness. I gave the cat, I got through, so I thought, okay, that might give me the time to figure things out. But the moment I joined IIM Ahmedabad and I went to the campus, the first week was all about placements. Placement this, placement that, internship placements, make your CV. So it got really overwhelming, and I felt that I've just left all these things behind so that I can move ahead in life, and this is definitely not what I wanted. So it was a very easy decision for me to make, because a lot of people again say what a risky decision it was or a brave decision it was. I felt it was one of the most obvious decisions I made, because I said, okay, now is the time for me to find something of my own. I had been thinking of entrepreneurship in a certain way, and I felt that I definitely don't want to get back into the rat race again. And Flexiple's journey started at that moment. I decided I need to figure something out, and our college had this program where we could opt out of the placements and instead focus on building something of our own. I took that on. Then I found my co-founders as well in the journey, and the three of us then also quit the final placements and then started our journey on Flexible.
Maybe we can be opinionated on this.
Exactly.
In India, right, we are talking about maintaining complete loyalty. One job. You should not, do two jobs at a time. You shouldn't freelance while you're committed to a large company. But what I see and I hear is that we are measuring output by number of hours rather than outcome. Punch in, punch out, rather than the work done. So, your thoughts, your views, your experiences, what you've seen.
Correct.
And is this the best way that we can actually structure employment?
Big question and a tough one at that. So I think, of course, there is a traditional outlook to work and punch in, punch out the entire 9 to 5, and don't leave your desk before your boss leaves, and do a lot of FaceTime. All of that have been big parts of the way that our traditional business and companies have grown. One of the biggest, I think, upsides of remote work is that you can't do any of that. I think in a remote environment, at no point of time now, I have 20 other people in our team. I don't know at this point of time what any one of them is doing. And that's exactly how I want it to be, because it's none of my concern. We have all aligned on what needs to be achieved. As long as it's done, it shouldn't really bother me what they're going to be doing at this point of time. Right? So I think remote work is going to bring that acceleration towards a better attitude towards employees. I think there are other, aspects it can go down as well, where people are now trying to monitor their employees in a much worse format than before. But I think a majority of movement is happening towards people really empowering their employees, ensuring that they have a good work environment and can actually drive goals driven on output and not just the number of hours or FaceTime and so on. So there is no particular way now. It's just flat, right? There is no way that you can actually FaceTime in front of your boss and show him or her that you've worked 14 hours, 18 hours. That's not possible anymore. You just work remotely, do a really good job, let your work talk for you. And I think that's going to be the future. I think people are going to be judged more on their skills rather than just their pedigree in terms of the degrees or whatever they bring. That's also going to be there. And I think personal brands, not everyone has to build it, for sure. But I think personal brands are going to play a lot bigger roles where people are able to show the skill set they bring publicly rather than just showing, again, their resume and CV and 4-5 points on their beautiful looking CV.
My one last question to you, there's so much to learn from you, but what are your sources?
Absolutely.
What are the maybe 1 or 2 places that you go to level up yourself?
I listen to a lot of podcasts generally. I think there are Y Combinator's podcasts. Usually, being a bootstrap company, I try to stay away from typical VC podcasts because I think there is a lot of very VC focused growth that they talk about. But I think Y Combinator does have really good content around building startups in a very thrifty fashion, in a very scrappy fashion. And I really resonate with a lot of things they say. And a lot of times it's not so much to just learn, but a lot of times what happens is that over the period of 4 years, you've learned a lot of things, but they've settled down subconsciously, right? So when you listen to someone else articulate it very well, you go like, yeah, that's exactly what we did, didn't we? So it just, those become more codified concepts instead of just being random thoughts. So I think some of that has happened there. Of course, I generally don't like to read too much of non-fiction books. I think they're too big for something which is just too little to talk about. I like to learn a lot more on a very specific level. So we do a lot of things at Flexible. The first thing we say is just do it really bad. It's fine. And your goal is to just be less bad than yesterday. Google as much as you want, read amazing blogs that come your way, and just be less bad than yesterday. And that's been the way we've grown. I didn't know SEO when I started. I didn't know, as I said, I wasn't on Twitter, so I didn't know how to write tweets, how to make a LinkedIn post, which actually people resonate with. We didn't know how to launch side projects, build products, so on. So I think it's just been about just going and doing it. And then there's just so much of helpful content online. Just read them bit by bit and figure your way through it. So it's been some of those podcasts and majorly about actually doing it, where I think I've learned a lot.
So this has been an awesome podcast, Karth. You are someone who I think a lot of people should look up to. You've built things, you've taken tough decisions. And
thank you so much.
Hopefully we can have more people listening to this podcast and learning from you. So thanks again.
Thank you so much.